The Amish communities of North America represent one of the most successful examples of sustainable, self-sufficient living in the modern world. These religious communities, numbering over 350,000 individuals across 31 states and 3 Canadian provinces, have maintained their traditional way of life for over 3 centuries, deliberately choosing to live apart from mainstream society and its conveniences. Perhaps nowhere is this separation more evident than in their approach to obtaining essential goods and food supplies. While most Americans depend heavily on grocery stores, supermarkets, and commercial food distribution networks, the Amish have developed and maintained an intricate system of self-sufficiency that allows them to meet virtually all their basic needs without relying on conventional retail establishments. This remarkable achievement stems from a combination of deeply held religious beliefs, practical necessity, and centuries of accumulated knowledge passed down through generations. The Amish philosophy of simple living, community cooperation, and separation from the modern world has created a unique economic and social system that prioritizes local production, mutual aid, and sustainable practices over convenience and efficiency. Their approach to food production and distribution represents not merely a lifestyle choice, but a comprehensive worldview that encompasses agricultural practices, community organization, economic principles, and spiritual beliefs. The foundation of Amish self-sufficiency lies in their agricultural heritage and their commitment to farming as both a livelihood and a way of life. The vast majority of Amish families either farm their own land or are closely connected to agricultural production through family or community ties. This agricultural focus is not accidental, but represents a deliberate choice to maintain independence from the outside world while preserving traditional skills and knowledge that have sustained rural communities for generations. Unlike modern industrial agriculture, which emphasizes specialization and efficiency, Amish farming practices prioritize diversity, sustainability, and community self-reliance. Amish farms typically operate as mixed agricultural enterprises, producing a wide variety of crops and livestock rather than specializing in single commodities. This diversification serves multiple purposes. It reduces risk by spreading agricultural activities across different products and seasons, provides families with access to a wide range of foods throughout the year, and creates opportunities for community exchange and cooperation. A typical Amish farm might include dairy cattle, beef cattle, hogs, chickens, and various other livestock, along with crops such as corn, soybeans, wheat, oats, hay, and extensive vegetable gardens. This diversity ensures that families have access to milk, meat, eggs, grains, and fresh produce without relying on external suppliers. The seasonal rhythm of Amish agricultural life revolves around the careful planning, execution of planting, tending, harvesting, and preserving activities that maximize food security throughout the year. Spring brings the preparation of gardens and fields, with families working together to plant vegetables, herbs, and field crops that will sustain them through the coming months. Summer involves intensive cultivation, weeding, and the beginning of preservation activities as early crops mature. Fall represents the culmination of agricultural efforts, with harvesting, food preservation, and preparation for winter consuming much of the community's energy and attention. Winter provides time for planning, equipment maintenance, and the processing of preserved foods that will carry families through until the next growing season. The scale and scope of Amish food production often surprises outsiders who are accustomed to purchasing their food from stores. Amish families routinely produce thousands of pounds of vegetables, fruits, grains, and meat annually, with much of this production dedicated to home consumption rather than commercial sale. A single Amish household might harvest several hundred pounds of potatoes, multiple bushels of beans and peas, dozens of cabbages for sauerkraut production, and enormous quantities of tomatoes, peppers, onions, and other vegetables. This production level requires careful planning, intensive labor, and sophisticated knowledge of growing techniques, pest management, and soil conservation. Vegetable gardens represent one of the most visible and important aspects of Amish food production. These gardens are typically much larger and more diverse than those maintained by most suburban or rural families, often covering an acre or more and producing dozens of different varieties of vegetables, herbs, and fruits. Amish women, who traditionally bear primary responsibility for garden management, possess extensive knowledge of seed varieties, planting schedules, cultivation techniques, and preservation methods that have been refined over generations. They carefully select varieties that are well suited to local growing conditions, have good storage characteristics, and provide the nutrients and flavors that their families prefer. The planning of Amish gardens reflects both practical considerations and cultural preferences developed over centuries of agricultural experience. Root vegetables such as potatoes, carrots, beets, and turnips receive prominent attention because they store well through the winter months and provide essential nutrients during times when fresh produce is scarce. Brassicas including cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts are expensively grown both for immediate consumption and for preservation through fermentation and canning. Beans and peas are cultivated not only for their nutritional value, but also for their ability to improve soil fertility through nitrogen fixation. Tomatoes, peppers, and onions are grown in large quantities to support extensive canning and preservation activities that provide vegetables throughout the winter months. The preservation of food represents one of the most critical and time-intensive aspects of Amish self-sufficiency. Without access to year-round commercial food supplies, Amish families must preserve the abundance of summer and fall harvests to sustain themselves through winter and early spring when fresh production is minimal. This preservation work requires extensive knowledge, specialized equipment, and enormous amounts of labor, much of which is provided through community cooperation and family networks. The techniques employed by the Amish encompass traditional methods that have been used for centuries, refined and adapted to local conditions and preferences. Canning represents perhaps the most important preservation method employed by Amish families, with many households processing hundreds or even thousands of jars of fruits, vegetables, and prepared foods annually. Amish women typically begin canning activities in early summer with the first strawberries and continue through late fall with the processing of apples, pumpkins, and other late-season crops. The variety of foods preserved through canning is remarkable, including not only common items like green beans, corn, and tomatoes, but also soups, stews, meat products, pickles, relishes, jams, jellies, and numerous other prepared foods. This extensive canning work requires significant investment in equipment, including pressure canners, water bath canners, jars, lids, and storage facilities, as well as the knowledge and skill to ensure food safety and quality. The social and community aspects of canning work are as important as the technical aspects. Canning often becomes a community activity, with groups of women working together to process large quantities of produce, share knowledge and techniques, and provide mutual support during the intensive harvest season. These gatherings serve multiple purposes. They make large-scale food processing more efficient through shared labor and equipment, provide opportunities for older women to pass knowledge to younger generations, strengthen community bonds through shared work and conversation, and distribute the workload during peak harvest periods when individual families might otherwise be overwhelmed. Fermentation represents another critical preservation technique employed extensively by Amish communities. The production of sauerkraut, pickles, and other fermented vegetables provides essential nutrients during winter months while preserving large quantities of produce without requiring energy-intensive processing or storage methods. Amish families typically ferment hundreds of pounds of cabbage into sauerkraut annually, along with various pickled vegetables, fermented dairy products, and other preserved foods. This fermentation work requires knowledge of proper techniques, timing, and storage methods, as well as appropriate containers and storage facilities. Root cellars and other traditional storage methods play crucial roles in Amish food preservation systems. These underground or partially underground storage facilities provide the cool, humid conditions necessary for storing root vegetables, apples, and other fresh produce through the winter months. Many Amish families maintain elaborate storage systems that can preserve fresh produce for months without refrigeration, using techniques that have been refined over generations of experience. These storage methods require careful attention to temperature, humidity, ventilation, and pest control, as well as proper harvesting and handling techniques to maximize storage life. Dairy production represents another cornerstone of Amish self-sufficiency, providing families with milk, butter, cheese, and other dairy products without reliance on commercial suppliers. Most Amish farms maintain dairy cattle ranging from single-family cows to larger herds that support both family consumption and local sales. The traditional approach to dairy management emphasizes animal health, milk quality, and sustainable production methods rather than maximum output or efficiency. Amish dairy farmers typically know their individual animals well, providing personalized care and attention that results in healthy, productive livestock and high-quality milk products. The processing of milk into various dairy products requires extensive knowledge and specialized equipment that Amish families have maintained despite the convenience of commercial alternatives. Butter production, cheese making, and the preparation of other dairy products represent traditional skills that are passed down through generations and practiced regularly in most Amish households. These activities provide families with fresh, high-quality dairy products while utilizing surplus milk production and extending the storage life of dairy products. Meat production and processing represents perhaps the most complex and labor-intensive aspects of Amish food self-sufficiency. Most Amish farms raise various livestock for meat production, including cattle, hogs, chickens, and sometimes sheep or other animals. The slaughtering, butchering, and processing of these animals requires extensive knowledge, specialized equipment, and significant labor investment, but provides families with large quantities of fresh, high-quality meat products. The timing of meat processing is carefully planned to coincide with cooler weather and the availability of community labor and resources. The community aspects of meat processing are particularly important, as individual families often lack the equipment, facilities, and labor necessary to efficiently process large animals. Community butchering events bring together multiple families to share the work of slaughtering, butchering, and processing animals, with participants receiving shares of the meat in proportion to their contributions of animals or labor. These events require careful coordination, appropriate facilities, and extensive knowledge of proper techniques to ensure food safety and quality. The preservation of meat through smoking, curing, canning, and freezing provides families with protein sources throughout the year. Grain production and processing represent fundamental components of Amish agricultural self-sufficiency. Most Amish farms produce corn, wheat, oats, and other grains, both for livestock feed and human consumption. The processing of these grains into flour, meal, and other food products requires specialized equipment and knowledge that many Amish communities have maintained despite the availability of commercial alternatives. Some communities operate their own grist mills, while others maintain smaller-scale processing equipment that allows individual families to prepare their own grain products. The production of flour, cornmeal, and other grain products provides Amish families with the foundation ingredients for bread, baked goods, and numerous other foods that form the basis of their diet. The quality and freshness of home-ground grains often exceed those of commercial products, while the ability to control the entire production process from planting to final processing ensures food quality and safety. The knowledge required for grain production and processing encompasses soil management, crop rotation, harvesting techniques, storage methods, and milling processes that have been refined over generations of practice. Bread baking represents a fundamental skill and daily activity in most Amish households. Without access to commercial bakeries or prepackaged bread products, Amish women routinely bake multiple loaves of bread several times per week, along with various other baked goods including rolls, pies, cakes, cookies, and seasonal specialties. This baking requires not only technical knowledge and skill, but also careful planning to ensure adequate supplies of ingredients, fuel for ovens, and time for the lengthy processes involved in bread production. The variety and quality of Amish baked goods reflect centuries of accumulated knowledge and experience with recipes and techniques passed down through generations of bakers. The social and cultural aspects of food production and sharing play crucial roles in Amish self-sufficiency systems. Community meals, shared harvests, mutual aid during times of need, and the exchange of surplus production create networks of interdependence that strengthen communities while ensuring that all members have access to adequate food supplies. These social systems provide resilience against individual failures or shortages while fostering the cooperation and mutual support that characterize Amish communities. Community events such as barn raisings, harvesting bees, and canning parties combine work with socialization, making large-scale projects more manageable while strengthening community bonds. These gatherings often include shared meals that showcase the diversity and quality of community food production while providing opportunities for knowledge sharing and social interaction. The timing and organization of these events require careful coordination to ensure that community labor and resources are available when needed most. The exchange of surplus production represents an informal but important economic system within Amish communities. Families that excel in particular types of production often share or trade their surplus with neighbors who may specialize in different products or who may have experienced shortfalls in their own production. This exchange system helps ensure that all community members have access to diverse, high-quality food supplies while providing incentives for excellence in production and specialization in areas where individual families have particular skills or advantages. Seasonal variations in food availability and production create rhythms that shape Amish family and community life throughout the year. Spring brings the excitement of fresh greens, early vegetables, and the beginning of new agricultural cycles. Summer provides abundance and the intensive work of preservation and storage. Fall represents harvest time and the culmination of agricultural efforts, with communities working together to gather and process the year's production. Winter offers time for planning, equipment maintenance, and the enjoyment of preserved foods while preparing for the next agricultural cycle. The knowledge and skills required for Amish food self-sufficiency represents accumulated wisdom that has been developed and refined over many generations. This knowledge encompasses not only technical information about agriculture, food production, and preservation, but also practical wisdom about timing, resource management, community cooperation, and the integration of food production with other aspects of daily life. The transmission of this knowledge from older to younger generations represents a critical function that ensures the continuity of Amish self-sufficiency systems. Amish children begin learning food production skills at an early age, participating in age-appropriate activities that gradually introduce them to the full range of knowledge and skills required for self-sufficiency. Young children might help with simple garden tasks, feeding livestock, or basic food preparation, while older children take on more complex responsibilities, including operating equipment, managing specific crops or animals, and learning specialized preservation techniques. This gradual introduction ensures that young people develop both the practical skills and the cultural understanding necessary to maintain self-sufficient lifestyles as adults. The education of Amish youth in food production and self-sufficiency occurs primarily through direct participation in family and community activities, rather than through formal instruction. This experiential learning approach ensures that young people develop practical competence and cultural understanding simultaneously, while providing opportunities for older community members to pass on their knowledge and experience. The integration of food production education with other aspects of Amish life ensures that these skills are understood not merely as technical competencies, but as expressions of cultural values and religious beliefs. The economic aspects of Amish self-sufficiency extend beyond simple cost savings to encompass fundamental questions about the role of money, markets, and economic relationships in human life. By producing their own food and other essential goods, Amish families reduce their dependence on cash income while maintaining control over the quality and methods of production. This economic approach reflects religious and cultural values that prioritize community self-reliance, environmental stewardship, and resistance to the materialism and individualism that characterize modern consumer culture. The reduced cash requirements of self-sufficient living allow many Amish families to maintain agricultural lifestyles that might otherwise be economically unviable in modern markets. By producing their own food, fuel, building materials, and other essential goods, these families can dedicate their limited cash income to items that cannot be produced locally, while maintaining living standards that compare favorably with those of their non-Amish neighbors. This economic approach requires careful management and planning, but provides independence and security that pure market participation might offer. The environmental implications of Amish self-sufficiency practices are significant and increasingly relevant in discussions about sustainable agriculture and local food systems. The diversified, small-scale agricultural methods employed by most Amish farmers emphasize soil conservation, biodiversity, minimal use of external inputs, and integration of crop and livestock production in ways that maintain long-term productivity while minimizing environmental impact. These practices often result in more sustainable and environmentally friendly food production than large-scale industrial agriculture, while providing higher levels of food security and community resilience. The rejection of many modern agricultural technologies and methods by Amish farmers is often misunderstood as simple traditionalism or resistance to progress. In reality, these choices reflect careful consideration of the environmental, social, and economic implications of different agricultural approaches. The emphasis on horse-drawn equipment, organic fertilizers, crop rotation, and integrated pest management represents a sophisticated understanding of agricultural systems that prioritizes long-term sustainability over short-term efficiency or profit maximization. The preservation of genetic diversity through the cultivation of heirloom varieties and traditional livestock breeds represents another important environmental contribution of Amish agricultural practices. Many Amish farmers maintain varieties of crops and breeds of livestock that have largely disappeared from commercial agriculture, preserving genetic resources that may become increasingly important as climate change and other environmental pressures create new challenges for food production. This preservation work is often carried out informally through seed saving and selective breeding programs that maintain traditional varieties while gradually adapting them to local conditions. The challenges facing Amish self-sufficiency systems are numerous and evolving, reflecting broader changes in agricultural markets, land availability, environmental conditions, and social pressures.